If you're listening on the podcast, be sure to jump back to the previous episode to listen to the first half of this conversation. Come back here for part 2.
Welcome to the Building Doctor Show with Jens Johansson.
All right, we're going to talk about split slabs. So this is another thing we see quite often. A split slab is two slabs. And so in a lot of where you'd have a deck, a podium deck of concrete, like parking garages underneath, and then a wood frame building on top or whatever frame building on top, you'll have a box, a concrete box or concrete lid. And oftentimes that concrete is what's called PT slab, post-tension, pre-tensioned. Either way, it's a concrete slab that has bolts. And so these tendons, or with bolts on the end of them, these are these circles, and then they come back and fill those holes with mortar. But you're tensioning the slab. So I pour this nice level slab, and then I tighten the bolts down on either side. So what happens to the slab? I'm tensioning it, so now it gets goofy. So then I have to it undulates, if you will, because I've tightened it down. So now I have to put a topping slab on it to hopefully run the water away. I want to run it away from the building. So I'm looking at this end, I'm looking at 2-inch thick topping slab. So hopefully on the building side, it's 3 or 4 inches thick. So I have some drainage that I'm running down. But what we see is we get water in between this split slab. Here's the split between the two slabs. So water gets in there and then can run anywhere. And then that PT slab is undulating. So we think it's going to drain out, but it actually drains under your building walls and into your unit and stuff like that. So in this instance or photo, we can see they've painted it or tried to coat it with a gray coating. Maybe they've done some deck coating on top of that split slab. But if they're getting any water between the two, it's game over, split slab issue. So when you walk around your building, you'll see little holes on two ends, not on every end, but on two ends. That's a PT slab. And if you have this little poured thing on top, that's called a split slab. So what do I mean by water leaking in between? Here's your split slab. You can see the different kind of slab on top of the PT. You can see all the water pouring out from that slab joint. Here's another one. You can see the white efflorescence pouring out from this. You can see water staining on these guys too. So two different buildings with a split slab situation where water is just flowing freely. And that will continue to give you nightmares because you've coated this top deck and you're still getting water in. I've caulked it. I've done everything I thought I should do, but you're actually getting water under and it's rolling around. Ken, do you have anything to add to that?
No, a few things. One is, you got your split slab. Sometimes it's either a concrete topping slab over that, or sometimes they also will show some photos of paver pedestal system. So you'll have your structural slab, and then on top of that, they'll have paver pedestals to make up for that difference on that one. And so sometimes the waterproofing is on top of the topping slab, basically a surface style waterproofing that has to be UV compatible, or you have waterproofing that is in between the topping slab and PT deck or underneath the paver system, the pedestal paver system.
Yep.
So two different types of waterproofing that you may have.
Yep. So here you can see there are little holes again for your cables. And on these areas of the slab, you don't see any little holes. So just kind of gives you. And so why we're worried about water running through this is we know that these are steel cables and water doesn't get along with steel. And so we've had projects where that cable actually rusts through and breaks, and it's a very dramatic failure because it's under pressure or it's been tightened. And so it'll literally rip up the concrete and be a very dramatic thing. And then you've lost some structural support in your slab as well. And so we want to keep water out of these steel cables. And so in this on these top photos, you can see that, well, the 3 out of the 4 photos, you can see water actively leaking in between these things. So something to consider. Ken mentioned pavers. And so here's a little cross section of pavers. People look down and they see concrete squares and tiles, and they don't think about they are sitting on these little pedestals. And then those are sitting on some kind of slab. This slab looks pretty rough and chunky with its lines in it, but this is a waterproofing membrane. Now, here's your drain, but your drain lip is sitting an inch higher. So now, in other words, I have to have this whole thing an inch full of a lake so that water will flow into that drain. So that's kind of a drag. We want to make sure that our waterproofing goes into our drain collars and everything flows down well. But so that's a generic photo. So here's actual photos. Now, Ken, why don't you talk about these?
Yeah, so sometimes, we're looking when we're removing pavers, we're looking at the condition of the waterproofing, seeing how it's tied in with the building, see how it's tied in with the drains.
Door pans.
Yep, door pans, how it's tied in with the whole building. So vital. So sometimes, these condominiums are built over parking garages, or sometimes there's offices or other occupancies down below that. And so it's just vital that we have a good working waterproofing system above that. Looking at, and for homeowners and HOAs and stuff, it's important just to, look at the specifically where those pavers would be over the drains and stuff, and keeping those drains clear and maintenance wise, because shockingly there's a lot of debris that gets down in there and needs to be cleaned out every so often.
Yeah, and what Ken's talking about is what do they call them? Tagging or marking. You can actually tag, this paver has a little drain in it, and we'll put little brass D's or something like that into the corner so that the maintenance guy can know there's a drain under that. He can use his paver puller. Everybody can buy these at Home Depot. They slide down in the slots and they allow you to lift the paver out. And that way you can inspect. But look at all the dirt. An amazing amount of dirt. Like you said, landscaper blows with the blower, but the dirt goes in between these cracks and eventually fills up that drain body. So if you got paver areas, you should be pulling them up, annually to kind of say, how much dirt's under that? When do we have to clean it? Let's try to flush it out. And a maintenance guy can pull, a row of pavers and run a hose and clean it out. But here we're checking slope. If the drain is over here, does it slope to that drain? Is it going the right direction? Columns, they don't sit on the paver system. They go through the paver system down to the concrete deck below. All right, planters. These are kind of the other thing that we need to talk about. So here you've got a building, and you've got a planter kind of bumping up against the building wall. Now I want nice lush plants, so I'm going to have irrigation in it. You can see the water flowing through the concrete because of the irrigation. So we really got to pay attention to how these planters are waterproofed to protect your building, but also keep all the soil and the fertilizer and all that stuff from running through the concrete and making the planters look ugly, and just having your plants thrive in there. It's great to have these, but they're a box and we have to make sure they're watertight. So here are a few good examples of planters against buildings and how we are waterproofing them and keeping them tight. Anything to say about this one? I got another planter thing I could show you.
Yeah, no, that's just right. Just similar to the waterproofing a foundation wall, we got to waterproof the planters, and then depends on what's going back drainage wise. A lot of times we could fill those planters with what's called a geofoam or rigid insulation board to help compensate for soil instead of going back with 4 feet of soil or something. And depending upon weight as well, it's always site specific. We can get a filler basically in lieu of soil to help compensate for costs and things of that nature.
Mhm. Okay. There's always a little penetration in these planters. They're for irrigation or lighting. And so it's very important to dig down and find it and look, because here's another example of, here is a it's a planter area because I believe it's over a parking garage. And
Mhm.
so here comes our irrigation and our electrical, because I got to have lights on those plants because it's cool. But this is, somebody just drilled right through the waterproofing membrane and took their caulk gun and went squirt, squirt, squirt. So I've got a 40-year membrane and a 3-year caulk joint. And so then they're wondering why they have water leaking into their garage. So we're fixing all this. But this was, what was this, sidewalks, or was this? What is the?
No, so we did, it's certain, waterproof
Oh, it's a
membrane.
different waterproofing.
Yeah, the gray you see, it can be exposed to UV where the black one cannot be. And
Okay.
so that's
Yeah,
why.
is that these? Yeah, that's these these
Yeah.
planters.
Yep, those
And
planners.
so you can
Yeah.
see the white on the inside edge.
Yeah.
And here's your electrical outlet right there. But yeah, these are big size planters over a parking garage. And yeah, it's how to waterproof them correctly. But they inevitably leak through the utility penetrations. Okay, plaza decks. If you live in a bigger, higher rise place, now this is a commercial building, but it's very similar. Envision a big underground parking structure under this building. You can even see down in this light well and staircase. We've got storefront doors down here, so we've got office space or parking garage, concierge space. So we've got tree cans. We've got different types of different types of concrete with it used to be brick. These were brick areas, but so we had brick and concrete and waterproofing there. We had flag posts that go down that need flashings. We've got stairs that have different flashings. So this would be an example of more of a downtown condo sitting over a big parking structure, but how we would deal with what we would call a plaza deck. And so, Ken, you can talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, so similar, like a split slab, you have the structural slab, and sometimes older buildings have basically what we call a conventional rebar structural slab, and the newer ones have, PT, they're post-tension or pre-tension type decks. And some of these pavers, the waterproof membrane wasn't done correctly. It was many, many years old. We always try to do waterproof membranes that we want at least 30 to 50 years out of. And that's what our goal is over. I never want to do it again. When
Right,
you
right.
want to see me again on that. So that's what our goal is. So yeah, just taking out all this concrete, all these pavers and getting it prepped for the new waterproofing and rigid insulation board and drain board and things of that nature.
Looks like the trees had kind of outgrown their planters, so they got replaced.
Yep, they got replaced. The different type, depending upon the age of the building, you might have different types of planters. These happen to be steel type planters. Most planters that we see are, concrete. We've also dealt with, wood assemblies as well, which is a little more difficult to deal with, but we have dealt with those things.
Okay.
We were looking for maintenance, a little less maintenance on this, so we went with concrete, making sure joint spacing is correct. All our waterproofing is between the structural slab and the concrete. So now, before the concrete is put back, we see all this waterproofing being, put down, all what we call interfaces, and penetrations are all being waterproof with, liquid type of flashing resins and things of that nature to get that done.
Here's
Stairs are,
Oh.
concrete stairs are then poured back in place over the structural slab.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, this was a big project.
Yeah.
Here's your staircase rebar or rebar tie off so you can pour in your stuff. Here's the different layering, as it's being installed. So yeah, this was turned out really nice. Okay. Here's kind of some afters, but you can see here's control joints between the different concrete types. You actually have some site drainage here. We've got our tree cans or tree areas. We've got sealant joints and flashings that are stairs and planters. There's a lot of things going on here. So here's another. Well, that was the same.
Yeah. Similar
Plant.
mentality. You have a plaza deck, so we have waterproofing that's going on top of the topping slab, so surface waterproofing. Where your arrow is actually waterproofing on top of the post tension deck, and then asphalt would be going on top, which is the bottom photo. So that we call that stuff like overburden. So overburden, if anybody hears that, overburden can mean concrete or asphalt or soil or rigid insulation board going back over the waterproofing that's over the slab, structural slab. So this one particular has all different types of waterproofing, like I said, surface waterproofing that could be exposed to the UV, and then basically a below grade waterproofing underneath the overburden on top of the PT.
Yep. Okay. All right, some simple landscaping ideas. I mean, we've got.
And sometimes it's just simple. Here's just a standing water situation. We put in a below grade trench drain. It was a lot of standing water, groundwater. We get rid of that, and then grass is put back and some shrubs go back, so it eliminates some issues and not a huge expense going on there.
What do we got going on here?
So yeah, this one was similar where we had negative slope towards the patios. Those berms were cut back, recontoured.
Really cool.
We got, retaining walls going in, drainage. Surface water is going away from the building versus going towards the building.
Right.
That originally was.
You could put a little putting green up here and try hard to get up that hill.
Yeah, it looks like it, doesn't it?
So this berm extended all the way through here. No, it really kind of tapered in, and so this
It continued.
cool.
Yeah, we cut into it. It was all slope. It was a little higher too, and it was sloped towards the patios.
Yeah.
So we just kind of really, we're allowed to remove trees that we had to because they were causing issues. But then we actually replanted more trees than we took out. So it's just a plant and tree in the right place. That's the key, is doing that. So.
Yeah, so it's an example of, here's kind of a beige complex, but that is cool landscaping, and it's really neat.
And that's a dead of winter. That's like in December.
Right.
So, we're looking forward to all the different colors throughout the year.
Okay. And just some, general ideas of, if your lawn looks like that, I mean, you can do kind of nice rockery paths and grass or creeping thyme in between them, and have a nice gazebo. Other picture, it's the same gazebo. This gazebo turned into a bike storage because it's next to a school, so there's lots of commuters that wanted a place to store their bikes. You got simple kind of, little gazebo seating places out here next to the lawn. You can play and do your things. Sport courts are fun. Our recommendation is you make it kind of a multi-purpose. There's plenty of things going on here. It's not just a tennis court. It's not, I guess even have kind of a bocce pit over here or something going on there, but it turns into a cool place to hang out, community idea. And so we put that into kind of the landscaping element of things. And if you want to have some ponds or little water features, those are easy to do as well. It adds a gurgle and a bubble and a kind of a white noise, which is a relaxing feature. So as we're wrapping up here, we're going to summarize for you. Look at slope and grade. If it's going against the building, it's working against the building. Make sure you understand your pipes are clean and properly connected. Those are the underground pipes. Waterproofing is necessary for below grade slabs and planters and things like that. And again, maintenance and cleaning of these drains and under paver areas. Watch out for penetrations like irrigation and lighting in your planters and everywhere else. Healthy landscaping to drink up the water in the soil. What do the plants drink? They drink the water up. So a good planting combination to take care of that. Sometimes if you have a wet site, you might need some additional trenches and drains, and that's just a function of, your site issues. But all these examples of the beautiful landscaping are low maintenance or, just native plants and a good design elements. And so you can walk around today and get a good sense if things aren't right for you. So now moving over to the Q&A, we see 3 questions in the Q&A. Here's your chance to get these in there. And I'll take a stab at them here. So how often should below grade waterproofing be inspected, or should we wait for issues to come up? So it's one of those things to kind of put on your timer list, I guess. Once you know you have it, and Ken and I were talking about 30-year, 50-year, kind of definitely put it on there. And so you don't have to deal with it. But inspecting it is as easy as taking a little garden shovel out there and kind of looking down at it, digging a little hole next to the building and seeing if it's present. I think, if you don't have it, then you have bigger issues. But keeping an eye on it, it should last for quite a while. Ken, how would you answer?
Yeah, I mean, key is, if it's a below grade unit, are owners complaining about high humidity conditions in the interior, or do they see, moisture conditions or water issues on the interior? That's definitely a sign something might be happening. And then to look into. But obviously, just taking a small shovel out there, you won't get to the footing necessarily, but you could see if there's a waterproofing membrane or drain board and how the gravel is and stuff like that. So you could do a little, look-see and just see what that looks like. And that can give you a good idea. So,
okay. Next question is, what are some erosion or hillside things to look out for with landslide and shoreline depletion issues? When is it too late to make preventative repairs? I want to avoid the emergency evacuation route. So erosion and hillside, you're going to see dirt kind of coming down in the little stream-like flows. You're going to see maybe some roots exposed. You might see some trees tipping a little bit. You'll see, that's not quite right. As far as hillside or landslide issues, those are a bigger issue. But preventative repairs, that's getting your drainage at the top of slope drainage, making sure that's working, making sure unnecessary water just isn't dumping over the edge, causing problems. Top of slope drainage. Do you want to talk about that, Ken? That's a specific drain piece.
Yeah, just making sure if your site, just knowing where the drainage goes, it's just really important. Is it discharging on top of the hill? Is it discharging at the bottom? Or the toe of the slope? If you're on a hillside, the toe of slope is really important, not getting a bunch of erosion going on there. I'd also look if it's a serious issue, if there's a cracking in the soil, that separation, you can actually see sometimes, cracks in the soil occurring if it's really an issue. Or look, you mentioned trees. So are trees, curved or bent or an S shape, is that signs of some kind of, movement? Usually that's a slow movement areas. But if it's definitely an issue, you can contact us. A lot of times it's a geotech looking at it, geotechnical consultant looking at it and see if there's other issues. But as far as preventative things, making sure we're not dumping a whole bunch of water on top of a hillside that could cause issues. Plant, I know time we're running out, but planting mulch is really important. Ground cover and plants that aren't overburdening the hillside are important just to help, keep the excess water off of that hillside.
Okay. And third question, we just got another one, so it's not too late. Enter your questions in there. Let's see. I have a very wet area on my property far from my building. It takes a lot of runoff from ditches in the neighborhood. Is there anything I can try to do to dry it out a bit, or plants I can put in to help with all the runoff? And so that sounds like it's far away from the building, so that's good. But kind of a wet area. Is it a pond? Is it a swale? Is it a lake? It's kind of hard to understand from the questions. But Ken, how would they slow down runoff from ditches, and how would they dry out this area, or plants to deal with this area?
Well, it sounds like it's almost a retention pond, stormwater retention pond that's nearby. And two, it's good that it should be away from the building. One thing to keep in mind, a lot of, associations have retention ponds or detention ponds, and even detention vaults, and they should be maintained probably every 7-10 years. They should be cleaned out, because those retention ponds get a lot of sediment buildup, and you'll be surprised. You could get feet keeps building up of all this sediment and debris, and then you have less water volume, and then when we get storms and things, it starts flooding, and then water getting into other areas. So
Right.
if it's part of your property, you should look into it and see if it is a retention pond, and then does it need to be cleaned out. And there's usually services companies with vac trucks that come out and will clean that out. And sometimes there's King County will send out notices to associations about maintaining the detention ponds or the vaults and stuff like that. So that's one thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, you brought up a good point. We're doing that on a few projects where the retention pond has overgrown and basically filled up with its own vegetation. So it started as a 3-foot retention pond, 3 foot deep, and now it's about a 6-inch deep retention pond because there's so many reeds and stuff like that in it. And they literally cleaned it out with an excavator and hauled it away, but it was kind of just full of lightweight junk. And so, yeah. Okay, number 4, last question we're seeing here. There is a large building site behind and slightly higher or above our property. The site owner plans to put in 24 houses. How can we make sure this site does not overflow water onto our property? Good question. So in the development rules or codes, there's temporary erosion control, TESC, and that's the silt fencing and the water control to make sure there's no runoff from that site to go into adjacent sites. Because after that site is stripped, it's really exposed. There's raw dirt. If it gets a heavy rain, all that mud is just going to go flying down the hill. And so there's usually pretty good regulation in there that says the site developer or site owner has to contain their site runoff, and it's called TESC. You can Google that. But they should as a part of most building programs, you would see that silt fence being erected. If it's not erected, call the building department, say, "What's up? I'm concerned about erosion coming off of there." And they have liability if there's erosion coming off their site onto yours. And so, what would you add to that, Ken?
Yeah, just look at it. There's another thing they put in is, best management practices, BMPs. It could be straw wattles, like straw coils or compost coils there, and silt fencing, and just making sure that they have something around the perimeter of the site, specifically on the downhill side. That would probably be between you and that property, that they have something to deter the water. And it is law that they have to maintain that water on that site and not get it onto your site during construction.
Okay. All right. And the last question we have was submitted previously throughout the month. And did you know you can do that? You can send questions to us anytime at hello@j2consultants.com, or Brooke will correct me in the chat and give you the right information. So this owner, I put little asterisks after each question I saw, but here's the question. We live in a small HOA with 13 owners. The board consists of 3 owners, and they are embarking on a major project. The board has not provided details of the project and are not following the best practices which you advocate. So I put an asterisk there. I'll come back to this. I'm viewing that as the first question. 6 owners are quite upset that there is no scope of work, only a single bid and no permit. Another question. Without a majority of owners, the board cannot be replaced. Next question. The majority seem to be very cost conscious, and they have full faith in the board to execute their plan. However, this project seems to be very risky in not addressing the known problems of our building and will likely result in significant expenses in the long run. Is there any remedy for the situation, or do we just have to suffer the consequences? I'm guessing that bad governance practices are foolish, but not illegal. So yeah, let's break that down. Okay, let's go for that first one. The board has not provided details of the project and are not following the best practices. Okay, you just got to slap them a little bit and say, hey, we need to understand what's going on here. You're asking us to have a vote, or you're asking us to pay for things. So we have a right to understand what you're doing. Can you hold a town hall? Can you explain the project to us? And then, it sounds like you probably passed the voting stage, but so anyway, ask for more information. The property manager has a duty to provide that. Your governing documents probably have some kind of duty in there, but just ask, saying, hey, let us know what you're doing. Number 2, 6 owners are upset because there's no scope of work and only a single bid and no permit. So that kind of raises my questions, or raises my eyebrows. If it's a major project and there's no permit, most of the time, if it's a major project, you need a permit. Your bylaws, 99% of them, or governing documents, 99% of them that I read require multiple bids if over a certain amount. So if there's only a single bid and it's more than that certain amount, they're not following their bylaws. And so that's a problem. And then no scope of work. How can you hold the contractor accountable if there's no recipe to follow? The scope of work is a recipe to follow. It should be rolled into a nice contract and saying you're supposed to be working off this contract per the scope of work, per these designs, and making sure that they're held accountable on that. Without a majority of owners, the board can't be replaced. It sounds like you've tried to overthrow the board and understand that you need a majority to do that. So then there's kind of this question of, the majority seem to be on board with it, but the project seems to be risky and might result in additional costs. And so that, I think, would get handled in that town hall meeting, or those further discussions of, just tell us more about it, and have you thought about these risks, and what happens if there's no scope of work. That's change order material for the contractor, saying, oh, I didn't include that. That recipe says, yes, include all these things. And then that contract says, here's what you're promising to do. If it's that's where the expenses, or significant unknown expenses, will come up from lack of clarity in the project and no contract, no scope of work, things like that. Do we have to just suffer the consequences? Well, I don't think so. I think you can talk to your management company, try to get through to the board. Most HOAs have a HOA attorney. If you really feel strongly, you can hire an attorney and sue the board. Bad governance practices are foolish but not illegal. Well, they become illegal when you're not following the not illegal, but against governing documents, when you're not following the what do you call it? Common sense business rules, where nobody expects volunteer board members to be an attorney, but they expect them to follow reasonable practices? And did they call their attorney to have this contract reviewed? Did they follow did they talk to their manager to follow their governing documents? Did they conduct themselves, following their governing documents? And if they're trying to sneak in something with only a single bid and kind of under the wire, and that's not following reasonable standards. Business reasonableness, that's the word I'm looking for. And so you can push those things a little bit. So hopefully that answered your questions. It's 3 board members, 6. So that's 6 of the owners are on board with it, or 6 of them are upset, but then a majority of them are on board with it. So, it sounds like more communication. So hopefully that helped. Ken, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's just perfect. Scope of work is so important, even for us. We needed something well-defined to follow, and specifically for a contractor. Again, what you had said, change orders can occur if there's not a good, clear scope of work. So that's always important. Even small, I've had a lot of small projects that are small enough for one bidder just to bid. It's allowable by the association. And they still should have a scope of repair even for that small work.
Yep. Okay. All right. And we're on to giveaways, and we're out of time. You can't have it. No, I'm joking. Here's our giveaway box, and we are going to pick number, let's see, let's go number 9. Brooke knows who you are by how you've signed up and your participant thing. She will reach out to you, and we will get this off in the mail to you. So thank you for participating in that. And then, did you know we have free resources for boards and managers? Go to learn.j2consults.com/resources. Go to YouTube. You'll find over 300 videos. Stream this webinar wherever you go. We are on Spotify, etc. And use that QR code to get us there. And thank you, Ken, for being on our show today. We've appreciated your insight. We've admired your designs. Anything to say to the audience?
No, just happy spring and happy planting, right? That's it's awesome to see that all this stuff that's blooming now. So
that's right. All the hay fever that comes along with it. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Ken.
Thanks.
Yeah.
This podcast is part of J2's free live webinar, The Building Doctor Show. To attend the live show and ask your questions during the Q&A, visit www.j2consultants.com.